Well, hi everybody. Hello from Wisconsin. And for those of you who do not know, my name is Mishael and I am one of Stephen's sisters. I wanted to share a message and memories that I have of Stephen. I got my computer right here below my camera that I'll be reading from. And first I want to apologize in advance if my road is too noisy. We live by a very busy road, unfortunately. My last house that I lived at, I lived by a very busy road, and I swore that I would never live by a busy road again. But here we are, living by another busy road. There's no escape. Anyway, I'll go ahead and get started. So, Stephen was only about 2 years older than me. So he was one of the siblings that I did play more often with as a child. And oftentimes it was the four of us together, the four of us meaning Stephen, Leaf, Jason, and me. A lot of times it was the four of us playing together. So more than half of my childhood memories have Stephen in them. Stephen was always there. He was there when we'd go on bike rides, sledding, hiking, sitting around the wood-burning stove in the wintertime, playing board games. And oh my gosh, was Stephen good at playing board games. Stephen had such good luck when playing Monopoly. It was ridiculous. As a kid, I remember feeling so jealous that he seemed to have this invisible power hiding up his sleeve, assisting him to win. It wasn't fair. If we were in nature by a river or a stream, Stephen would become obsessed with catching a fish with his bare hands. I personally was entertained by doing this for about 20 minutes or so, but would give up when I realized it was too difficult. The fish were too fast and too slimy. I would get bored and I would beg Stephen to give up as well, so that we could move on and explore something else. But he didn't want to leave until he had caught one. So I would wait patiently and watch him. I was amazed with his determination. And for some reason, this memory of him is my favorite. There was many times that we'd be in the mountains or somewhere where there was a body of water that he was trying to catch fish, but there was one particular day in particular I remember sitting there watching him with what seemed like a very, very long time. Anyway, it was just, back then as a kid, it just felt like the world was so innocent and simple, and when I think back at that day, it just feels heavenly. But anyway, so most of the time when I was with Stephen, I was also with the rest of my brothers. But on rare occasion, it was just the two of us on rare occasions. Sometimes we would be walking home from school, just the two of us, or walking to and from the nearby gas station. When we'd walk, Stephen would tell me all about how the world worked. He'd tell me about his dreams he had the night before. He'd tell me about the third eye. I remember I was very fascinated by that. As kids, Stephen and I did not make a very good pair, though, because he was very competitive, and I did not have a single competitive bone in my body. One day while playing outside, Leaf and Jason had paired up against me and Stephen. And we were in a competition to see who could build the greatest nature hut. Stephen was quick to come up with a plan on how to use the big sticks and other nature materials that were around us. And I remember that Stephen's idea did sound fantastic, and it did seem like it would be better than theirs. However, I had calculated in my head that what Stephen was describing would most likely take a week to fully complete. It was far too much work, in my opinion. So I said to Stephen something along the lines of, Wouldn't it just be easier if we admit to them now that their hut is better? That way we don't have to do all this work and then we can just all get along? I remember Stephen looked at me as if I were crazy, and I think he realized then that he had picked the wrong person to be his partner. Stephen was very clever and bold, and it didn't seem like there was much that he was afraid of. And for some reason, he rarely ever got sick. He is one of the few people that I know of that could go years and years without getting any sort of sickness. It boggles my mind. He seemed to have this immunity of steel, and I don't know if he did get sick and just knew how to hide it well, but I don't know. But it certainly seemed like he never ever got sick. Just weird. Anyway. As a teenager, Stephen and I had a very unusual relationship. We did not always get along, and we disagreed on just about everything. But regardless, if I needed help with something, then he was quick to lend a helping hand without hesitation. One time in the morning, I got Don's van stuck in the snow in the driveway. I woke Stephen up and asked if he could come out and help me. I thought he was going to get mad at me for waking him up, but he didn't. He just quietly got dressed and helped me without any complaint. When he and I would go and do errands together, he would offer to buy me lunch. He had a very sweet side to him. And I will never forget the day when Stephen had walked into the house with a big smile on his face and told me that he had just bought me a car. I remember I felt like my heart had skipped a couple beats. I was like, "You bought me a what?" Anyway, he was like, "I bought you a car." And he had a big smile on his face. Stephen knew just how badly I wanted to move out, and he knew that I would need a car in order to do so. So behind my back, and without telling me, he had bought me a broken up Honda Civic and intended to fix it up for me. True to his word, he did fix it up, and I was head over heels in love with my new car. It was an equal exchange. I gave him monthly payments on it. It wasn't like he just bought me a car and just gave it to me for free, so it was an equal exchange. When December came, Stephen told me that I didn't need to pay him for that month, so that I could have more money to spend on Christmas gifts to buy for the family. I thought that was very thoughtful of him. As a teenager, I could always count on Stephen to get in an argument with, just as much as I could count on him to be there for me if I needed him. And for some reason, Stephen and I got along just fine as long as we were driving in a car. I don't know why, but as long as we were driving in a car, we got along just fine. So perhaps we should have went on more drives together. Just as long as it wasn't a motorcycle, because I am a wuss when it comes to riding on motorbikes, specifically with Stephen, and I will tell you why. Back when we lived in Mapleton, years ago, when Stephen got his first motorbike, he asked me if I wanted to go for a ride with him. I said sure. We drove down the neighborhood, and I'm not sure what exactly happened, but he slowed down and then we somewhat crashed. I just remember the motorcycle tipped and we fell down. It wasn't bad, I remember I hurt my leg. But more than anything, it just scared me. So Immediately after that, Stephen told me, "Don't tell anybody about this, okay?" I kept my promise and I didn't tell anybody, but I think I've kept the secret long enough, so I'm telling everybody now, but not that it matters. But so years and years had passed after that little incident. I had gotten married. I came to Payson to visit. Randy and I were standing in the backyard as we watched Stephen approaching us on his motorcycle. When Stephen came to us, slowing to make a stop, his motorcycle slid and tipped, falling to its side. Stephen got mad at himself. Then he looked up at me and he said, "You're bad luck. I can't ride a motorcycle with you around." I knew that he was also referring to our past experience, which surprised me that he remembered that since it was so long ago. So Stephen went on to explain that this had never happened to him before except for those 2 times with me. So I started to believe that, gee, maybe it's true. Maybe I am bad luck for his riding. Stephen didn't know this, but for years I had secretly wanted to muster up the courage to ask him for another ride. But I always chickened out because I feared we would get in a crash. I would go back and forth in my mind saying, "Oh, it will probably be okay." And then I'd say, no, I can't chance getting into a big crash and dying now that I have children. Anyway, I never did ask Stephen for that ride, and I regret it. Stephen was the kind of brother that if you were his pregnant sister, he would randomly walk up to you with a healthy green smoothie, hand it to you and say, "Drink that," and then he'd silently walk away. He was very sweet and thoughtful. He is actually the one who got me interested in drinking green shakes and learning more about wild edible plants. I am still following that passion today. One year, for the holidays, I had made 2 pies to be brought down to Payson. One of the pies was pumpkin cheesecake. And when I had made this pie, I had actually made a mistake, and I was hoping that nobody would notice my mistake. Later, Stephen had contacted me saying that he really liked the pumpkin pie. He asked if I could make another one just for him and that he'd be willing to pay me money for it. I told him, "Sure, I can make you one, but don't worry about paying me for it because that's weird." But I thought, well, gee, if he liked that pie even though I had made a mistake, I bet he'll like this new pie even better because this time I'm going to make sure to do it right. So I made the pie correctly this time and had Jason deliver it to Stephen for me. Later, Stephen had given me his feedback. He said, "Well, it was good, but for some reason it wasn't as good as the first one you made." Stephen, I never would have imagined that you would leave like this. You are a big part of my childhood, and you will always have a special place in my heart. And I'm sorry that it took your death in order for me to realize this. When I first found out that you had taken your own life, it felt like I had been punched in the gut. For days I cried, and I cried. Losing a sibling was far more painful than I could have ever imagined. But I do respect your decision. I stand by you in your choice to leave, because I know that your soul knows exactly what it's doing. Even though this was painful for you, me, and many others, I have sensed that it was meant to be, that you are very much needed in a different realm at this time. I don't know if they have motorcycles where you are at, but I have no doubt in my mind that you will find a way to obtain one. When I die, I will see you again, and I will say to you, "Hello, brother. It's good to see you again. Please, take me for a ride on your motorcycle." Peace be with you all. I hope you all have a good rest of your evening. Bye-bye now. Bye.